Greetings, circuit riders. We're moving from the prophetic work of Frances Willard and the desires of women who were exercising the burdens of Methodist ministry, and now in the late post-Civil War era, women were making a strong case that this was the Pentecostal vision of men and women both visioning the future. So after Frances Willard's courageous fights in temperance, Boston University, Methodist University, not Boston College, which is Catholic, Boston University admitted a number of very powerful intellectual women. Anna Snowden Oliver, which was the first to graduate from Boston University School of Theology, and there were others before her that had been licensed by the United Brethren. Charity O'Farrell and the Methodist Protestant Church in 1869 had ordained a woman as well, but with the graduation of Anna Oliver from Boston University, it put a test case before the New England Conference, and initial communications were that Anna would be ordained, and the bishop died, who was sympathetic, and Anna Oliver was licensed by the Passaic, New Jersey MEC Church, and had worked there for a while, and then worked in Willoughby Avenue Methodist Episcopal Church in Brooklyn throughout the period. But she and one of her co-students, Anna Howard Shaw, both approached the New England Conference in 1880 with a test case. There's ample documentation. They both were tried to be steered towards the direction of Phoebe Palmer as conference evangelists, but they both wanted to continue the work that they'd begun with their congregations. So Anna Oliver is actually the first woman seminary graduate school graduate in American history, and she presented for ordination in 1880, as she graduated in 1876 actually, and then Anna Shaw graduated in 1880, and they both presented to the New England Conference, but the controversy pushed them aside, and each had to take separate paths. Anna Oliver here continued to pastor at Willoughby Avenue in Brooklyn, the Methodist Episcopal Church there. And Anna Shaw had a different path. Let's look at Anna Shaw. Anna Howard Shaw grew up in Michigan and went to Boston University Theology School, graduating in 1878, second woman to graduate from BU. And she, with Anna Oliver, went to the annual conference, the New York conference, and they were denied. And so Anna Howard Shaw went to the Methodist Protestant Church. You will recall that inclusive, or radically inclusive for the 1830s group, had already begun to license local preachers, and Anna Howard Shaw went before their board, and it's a powerful story. She was smarter than the boards of ordained ministry that interviewed her. She served for a time in the Methodist Protestant Church, but then went back to BU, got her medical degree, and then was asked by the Methodist Church the Methodist Church Protestant, after her 1880 confirmation, which she was asked to be ordained the second day in a separate ceremony. By 1883, she was kind of done with all that. She went back to BU, got her medical degree, worked with the poor in the slums, and then was asked by Woodrow Wilson to work with the National Council of Defense in World War I and argue and preach nationally for women's suffrage. And she died on the way to Europe, arguing for women's rights and for the League of Nations. We have the Boston University School of Theology Anna Howard Shaw Center, which my colleague has put together, and we'll talk about that later. Anna Oliver and Anna Howard Shaw continue to challenge us as women who graduated at the top of their class at Boston University School of Theology, and yet had to find their own way in ministry. And this is true with many women even today, graduating from Methodist seminaries, United Methodist seminaries, having to find their own way with their creative spirit and their power of intellect. And Anna Oliver and Anna Howard Shaw continue to be a prophetic witness to us. And you can look at BU's Anna Howard Shaw Center as a great spiritual reminder of the path of women in ministry in the global connection. There's a song, when you got a dirty job to do, in the rabbinic tradition. It's actually not a song, it's a rabbinic phrase. You need to get a dirty man to do it. But with Methodists, it seems like when the urban ministry opportunities of immigration and massive demographic shift to the northern and even the southern conglomerates of urbanization, you got to get a woman to do it. And Lucy Ryder Meyer, the woman here on the right, who had been trained at Oberlin, one of the great coeducational universities, in chemistry, with her husband, created a ministry teaching center for foreign missionaries in Chicago called the Chicago Training Institute, in which they took the model of German deaconesses who would dress in the bonnet and go work in the slums. And she did that in 1887 in Chicago to train essentially wives of missionaries going, and some males going abroad, in some basic first aid and medicine. It was so successful that Lucy Ryder Meyer created a program and presented it to the General Conference of 1888, in which the deaconess movement was created to spearhead urban ministry. So if you've got a tough job to do in the city, ask a Methodist woman or a United Methodist woman to do it. I'm sure Jan Love, Dr. Jan Love, our own dean, would certainly celebrate this work. The South, Belle Harris Bennett and her sister Sue Bennett created not only deaconess work in the southern dominated cities such as St. Louis and Louisville and Nashville, and Belle Harris Bennett brought the deaconess movement to serve the poor and the needy and the sick in the South. So Sue Bennett College, which just celebrated its 100th anniversary back in about 2000 and was disbanded because of the economic issues of the early 21st century. But Sue, her sister, and Belle Harris Bennett, a good Southern woman with connections to the MECS, argued that women should be at the forefront because families are at the back burner of industrialization, even in the South. And so Belle Harris Bennett argued that women needed to have representation in the Methodist Episcopal Church South. She died of cancer. She was elected to be a General Conference delegate at the MEC South, but she died of cancer before she could take her seat. Let's look at a few quick maps. The Deaconess movement of both the North and the South were widespread. The lighter dots are the MEC of the North, and many of these deaconess work was under the Women's Home Mission Society that came with all the denominations. But the ME deaconesses charge: you are to minister to the poor, visit the sick, pray with the dying, care for the orphans, seek the wandering, comfort the sorrowing, save the sinning, and relinquishing wholly all other pursuits. Devote yourselves to such forms of Christian labor as may be suited to your abilities. You can see that both Northern, here in Seattle, or San Francisco in this picture, and the Western states were kind of dominated with the Women's Home Mission Society and the deaconesses of the North. But Louisville, Nashville, in the coal mining areas of Kentucky, and in Kansas City, the Scarrett School, which ultimately moves to Nashville, becomes some of the great witnesses of the deaconess movement. And you can see here the names of all these hospitals, deaconess homes for orphans, and we don't even have time to go through it all, but the deaconess movement truly, with the North and the South, provided an avenue of powerful connected leadership through the Women's Home Mission Societies in many cases, of both the North and the South, of the old Wesleyan knowledge of bringing knowledge, vital piety, personal and social holiness to the urban areas. Were it not for the deaconesses, and you can look at the maps here, these were all serious commitments to urban ministry at the point when it is clear in retrospect that the churches were beginning to leave the urban environment. So the deaconesses of both the North and the South created urban ministries that continue to evolve today and challenge us with their prophetic witness. The deaconess movement overlapped and nourished both international mission and mission to the urbanized margins. You can see here the Chicago Training School, founded by Lucy Ryder Meyer in 1906. The deaconess movement began to subside as women gained more and more rights in the connectional and conference system, particularly after 1956 with the General Conference legislation that admitted women as full conference members. But it's the Women's Home Mission Society, working with the deaconess movement, worked not only locally but transcended international work with the training of women to serve throughout urban America, the national scene, and international global connectionalism in Methodist Episcopal Church of the North and the South up until 1939.